click a like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Peace. Hey guys, just finished watching Legion, season 2, episode 6, chapter 14. This episode was definitely quite interesting. There's just so much stuff going on in this episode, so let's jump into it. So we go pretty much just start bouncing off through all kinds of different versions of David and stuff, and we see a future David who's kind of a bum and stuff, future David who is rich with a big house, and older David is not sure if it looked like it was with Sid type thing, but probably not. Amy Haller's a real estate agent at one of them. It doesn't really get really relevant, or doesn't really go anywhere. David works at a big company and ends up telling the boss that he can read minds, and that ends up getting him places, and later on we find out that that's where it connects to him being the rich person at the beginning too, so that's all kind of all connected. So it was all really interesting stories, even that little story on its own where David tells his big boss that he can read minds, and he uses that to get him further into his company, and he helps the boss out, stops them from doing a bad deal and stuff. And that was an interesting idea. Watching that on its own was almost just like, wow, this would be a good show on its own, type thing. Is if there wasn't this crazy, I prefer this show where it makes you think and it's really difficult to follow and all that stuff. But that other show, that other idea, this little tidbit here, this little scene on its own could be its own show, and that could have been a different version of the show where it was just a clean, simple show where he uses it to get him his way up, and that would have been an interesting idea to play with. But this version is obviously better, but it's just an interesting idea that this show could have been a different way, could have been simpler, if this concept for this pilot, when Noah Hawley pitched it, if it was to someone other than FX, maybe ABC or NBC or any of those, more regular TV shows, TV networks, maybe it would have been a different way, and that could have been an interesting idea, but it wouldn't have been as good as this. So it was an interesting idea seeing that. Then there's talks about how I started thinking about how all these different versions of these could be different versions of David inside his head. But David says that these are all different universes, so that could be an interesting idea, different multiverses, which is quite interesting what it is. It's interesting to see if that's what it is, or if that's what David believes, because it all does track with the whole, Marvel 616 and then a different universe, the Ultimate Universe, and all that different stuff going on in the Marvel comics. So that's really cool there. We'd see David back to season 1 where Amy told him that she might be getting married, and then we get a lot after that. We get a lot of scenes from season 1 and stuff. We see IRS David working. It looks like he's working for the IRS because one of the folders had IRS when he's just sitting at a desk with all kinds of different boxes and stuff, and like a cubicle in his own room, like in a basement of a building, just doing files and stuff. And there's a singing mouse who's singing "Slave to Love" by Brian Ferry type thing. So that was really cool seeing that. It was quite funny seeing that idea. I laughed out loud when I saw that mouse only on Legion would that work type thing. I think that would be quite a funny clip with cut out David, and you put that clip online and guess this show type thing, and you'll never guess what that is type thing, which is quite funny. Quite interesting like that. I like that idea in this show. It doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't mean anything. You could have cut that part out and it wouldn't change whatsoever in this episode, because this episode was particularly difficult to follow. So it was quite interesting seeing that. David Seeds ended up seeing Sid in the car passing by, which really that's the only time she's in the episode. I feel like she was probably contracted to appear in every single episode, and unless she hasn't missed an episode already, but maybe she's contracted to appear in every single episode, and that's why she was in this episode, because really she's the only one of them that really shows any other person that shows up other than David, having Dan Stevens, the only one in this episode. And then David ends up gets beat up by a bunch of people and blows up and ends up eviscerating them, and they're gone. They're just kind of shadows on the pavement and stuff, which is quite interesting. And it reminds me of Iron Man 3 with the whole premise and storyline from that, and the people blowing up and stuff. So that was quite interesting there. David gives his sister a nosebleed, the future, the rich sister, the rich David, and when he's been rich after helping his boss out, he ends up becoming the world's most richest person, and his sister comes asking for a house, and he just gives her a nosebleed type thing. That was cool, but doesn't go anywhere. David sees Farouk as himself. There's a part where David is, he's kind of the older version. He's He's kind of looking at David, and he looks at himself in the mirror, and he sees Farouk popping up type of thing. So that's really cool. It's unclear. I'm assuming that it seems like he's seeing himself as him. Maybe he's affected by Farouk in himself. So that's unclear to see where things going with that. David is attacked by a bunch of soldiers, and they're no match for him. He just kind of throws them away. So that was really cool seeing that. But it's just kind of different versions of him. It was cool seeing him use those powers that way, and seeing those scenes are really cool. I just wish this was kind of clearly more, because before the other seasons had been a little bit more easier to follow. This episode just feels all over the place, and it doesn't feel like there's no narrative story in this episode. And they've done episodes like this before in Legion, where there's no story in this episode. There's just one thing you come out of this episode with. And that's the only thing that matters type thing. They just get 1 point across, and they take the whole episode to do it, and the rest doesn't matter whatsoever. That's just all fluff to get that 1 point across. And I like when they do that. It's interesting when they do that for these episodes, but in this episode, I really don't get what the 1 point was for this episode, what the one thing that they're trying to get across in this episode. And we don't have any of John Hamm in narrating it in this episode, so that was also kind of lost on me too, why they didn't use him to get that 1 point across. David is attacked by the soldiers, throws them away, nothing, and then David is cut in half by Carrie, the girl version of Carrie. So that was quite cool seeing that. She just kind of slices him in half just before he's about to explode and kill everyone away. And then we're back to season 1 when he tried to hang himself, and then we see David ends up wiping out a bunch of people. They all mostly end up ending with David wiping out a bunch of people. And then the cool part was when David, we get to the one where David's kind of working at a grocery store, just moving boxes and stuff, and he ends up getting in a scuff with the police, and long story short, he gets shot, and then decides to eviscerate them, but his sister, Amy, is there. He eviscerates all of them, even their cars, the cop cars, all gone, and his sister's still there, so that was quite interesting with that. I would have liked to have seen what would have happened if he got shot. Does he have any regenerative powers? If he's able to kind of, eviscerate people, anyone around him, and keeps whatever he wants still there. All the cars, all the people, everything are just gone. They're just shadows on the pavement. And yet his sister was completely fine. I think that was quite an interesting idea, playing with that, how powerful he is. He's able to kind of control that, not just it's not uncontrollable. He's able to control exactly who survives, who doesn't, right? But he's not able to heal himself from a single bullet shot. Now I understand when he gets cut in half by Carrie, obviously that's, you can't come back from that really unless you're Thanos with the Time Stone, with the Infinity Gauntlet or anything. But him being able just a little bullet, maybe it went through his heart or whatnot, but he can't change that. I don't know. It would be cool to see how things would happen, in different timelines. So, but it was interesting that the one common thing that I got from most of them was that most of them do end with David wiping people out and wiping a lot of people, or him dying. Not all of them really. I mean, we had that old one at the beginning where he's really old and he's being taken care of, and he can't brush his teeth, he can't drink, can't do anything alone whatsoever. That one doesn't really go anywhere. We don't see what the ending is. We don't really go anywhere with that. So all in all, this episode was quite interesting. And then it ends with David going to Clockworks, and then we get a recap of season 1 and so far what we have on season 2. So this episode was really an interesting episode. I liked the episode, but at the same time, I feel like I'm missing something from the episode. I don't quite understand the episode as to, what was that one thing they're trying to get across. I feel like that was the whole point of this episode, is there's one thing they're trying to get across, and I really didn't get that one thing. So maybe they should have made it just a little bit clearer, or have the John Hamm, like he did in the last episodes, just kind of explaining that one point, just like he did for the placebo effect and the nocebo effect in last episode or the episode before. So all in all, it was kind of an interesting episode. Definitely can't wait to see where things go in next week's episode. Looks like we're going to get back with him, but it'll be quite interesting to see if any of these things become part of our timeline. Our timeline, is this actually part of different multiverse, like he says in the episode? Is it all taking place inside of his head, or is this the actual future that all happened before he got to Clockworks, before we saw in season 1? So that'll be quite interesting to see that and how that plays into the rest of the season. Although we are, we do only have 4 episodes left, but at the same time, there's so much that goes on in this episode, it would be difficult to keep track of all of that and remember any of it for the rest of the season, if any of that does come into play, which I'm assuming is the whole point of the episode, but we'll have to wait and see what it is here. So let me know what you think, guys, about this episode in the comments below. Season 2, Episode 6, Chapter 14, and let me know what you think is the main point they're trying to get across with this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
I'm Captain America, here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have.
Subscribing.
Sometimes is the key to victory. Sometimes it leads to very little, and it seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing. How many more of these?
You're still here.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Peace.
It's over.